Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
Frozen Kate stood at the bus stop, trying to hide from the breaking rain. It wasn't going well. The old boots managed to get soaked through. My nose turned red and my hands were freezing. The bus never came. The girl wistfully turned her head, looking for any kind of transportation. She was already ready to change trains, and she figured she had enough change. While she was pondering which minibus she should take, an expensive car pulled up near the bus stop. Kate looked at the car with interest, and then turned away, knowing that she could not ride in such cars. However, after a couple of seconds, the car window fell down, and Kate heard a pleasant man's voice. "Young lady, I'll give you a ride," said the driver. "No, thank you." Kate shook her head. "And I don't ride with strange men." "That's right," the driver said. "Only we don't know each other personally, of course, but still." "My name is David. I'm the owner of the office building. Where you work as a janitor." To put aside the ceremonies, the man said, and turned on the lights in his car. Kate looked at him more closely. She remembered him. But it didn't change anything. Kate was not a stupid girl, and understood perfectly well that good cars with rich uncles just do not stop. She did not have time to develop her thought, because David said, "Get in, don't be afraid. I won't infringe on your honor." After all, she was frozen. Kate looked longingly at the bus stop. There was no transport either. The girl sighed twice and decided to take David up on his offer after all. But what is he doing here? I don't think he's bringing up love feelings. I am a plain girl dressed poorly, and I have seen his wife. Doesn't the Corps Olivier look after such wiretaps? Naming the address. Looking at the way Kate ineptly fastened her seatbelt, David muttered. The girl called the address and stared out the window pensively. She didn't know what to talk about with this man. And the warmth of the car so gently occupied her that she didn't want to think. But Kate could not sit in silence. David started asking questions. "Why are you working as a cleaner? You look young and interesting. You could have found something better. They scrub the floors at night." "I need the money." "That's my floor," Kate just answered. "You could have gone somewhere else," objected David. "I also work in a store and study." "I haven't had time to study by correspondence," sighed the girl. David didn't stop at this question. He kept asking and asking. Only Kate had the feeling that the man himself knew the answers to all his questions. She already wished that the trip would end sooner. But when they pulled up to the house where Kate and her grandmother lived in a small two-room apartment, David asked her a question that almost made her scream in her voice. "What happened to your son?" point blank, looking at Kate. He asked, "Where are you from?" There was a girl at first, but she was silenced by her head. A memory came over her, a memory she'd been trying to escape for the past 2 years. Memories that kept her awake, drove her crazy. In time, the pain receded. But now, when a completely unrelated man begins to reopen a wound that has already healed a little, it hurts, unbearably painful. "How do you know about my child?" Kate pulled herself together and asked David. "And anyway, who are you to ask me questions like that? Don't be so boisterous," the man said very gently. "I know a lot about you." "Yes, not surprised by this one." He grinned, seeing her astonished face. "With money and desire, one can find out a lot. I have both. In fact, I have my own interest in you." "What is it?" Stammering, Kate asked. She was already cursing herself for agreeing to get into this car. She was scared. She did not understand what this stranger wanted from her. Not shaking, and David spoke calmly. "I know you need money. If I'm not mistaken, your grandmother you live with is sick for her surgery and rehabilitation." Needing funds, looking at Kate, the man clarified. The girl nodded silently, not understanding where the man was going. "Well," David continued, "you will never get the money for the operation. Even if you clean the floors in all the offices around the clock, you couldn't get a loan." "Why are you telling me all this? I already know that. Who are you to pry into my personal life?" shouted Kate, quickly pulling the handle on the car door. Kate wanted to leave the car, to get away from this man who was so unceremoniously invading her life, pushing on the most painful risk points, pulling out the lingering ran. but Kate couldn't get out. The door was blocked immediately open, or I started to. Kate, but David interrupted her. Calm down and listen to me. I'm not going to hurt you. Think about it. If I wanted to do something bad, would I have brought you here to your house? Would I have stood under a streetlight where anybody could see my car in the smallest detail and memorize the license plate number? Probably not, the girl thoughtfully stretched out. No, I don't, the man said. So calm down and listen. I have a mutually beneficial offer. I'm not going to have sex for money. Kate blurted out immediately. Shut up, shouted David. What kind of young people are these days? You can't say a word. You made it up. You're scared. You're offended. Listen to me carefully and don't interrupt. Got it. You can ask me all your questions later. Kate nodded silently. She already wondered what David was going to offer her. In the meantime, the man was talking. I am willing to pay you money for one favor. It would be enough to pay for your grandmother's operation and even for her medicine. It's a very unusual request, but I'll start an order so as not to frighten you. And you probably know that I have a wife named Emily. David looked at Kate, and she nodded, confirming that she'd seen his wife. She and I have been together for 10 years, and we're doing fine. Except no kids. Long-term treatment and observation in the best clinics do not work. Emily cannot give birth by herself. That's why we decided to take the surrogate's help. Kate nodded in time with David's words, not yet understanding where he was going with this. With his money and opportunity, he could find a woman willing to give birth to him, especially since clinics specializing in surrogacy have become quite plentiful. Kate has heard about it on television. The girl looked at David with interest, waiting for what he would say next. Unfortunately, the man continued, in the clinics of our city, we have not found a suitable surrogate mother. The applicants didn't like me or my wife. That's why I wanted to offer you to become a surrogate mother and give birth to a child. David said simply and looked pointedly at Kate. But why me? Quietly muttered the girl, surprised. You don't know me by that sentence. She stared intently at the man, who was silent. It seemed that he was choosing the right words. So why did Kate repeat her question to me, without taking her eyes off him? It was my wife's whim. When Emily saw you, she went on and on about how you should be the surrogate. I tried to tell my wife that you were probably too young and hadn't had a baby yet, so you weren't right for us. But she stuck her neck out. I asked around, and when I found out that you had already had a baby, I jumped on my wife's idea too. You know what hooked Emily on you? You looked just like her when she was young. So she wanted a girl who looked like her to carry our baby. What would be the point of that? Kate shrugged. Because a surrogate mother is just an incubator. To put it crudely, the baby won't inherit anything from me. Yeah, I know it's hard, David sighed. But I'm telling you, it's her whim. She's been reading all kinds of crap on the internet, and I didn't argue. First of all, it's useless. And secondly, we couldn't find a suitable candidate anyway. I think you're lying. Kate thought for a couple of seconds and then said, I don't look anything like your wife. I have seen her. She's the queen. And me? I'm very different. If you had that much money, you wouldn't just be a queen, the man grinned. I'm not lying to you. It's just that Emily has been to the plastic surgeon's table a couple of times, had her breasts done, changed the shape of her nose, something else. So her appearance now is quite different from the original version. But I like it, I love her, and we've been through a lot together. I'm only explaining this to you so that you will agree to my proposal. And there's no sense in you refusing. You'll get good money, and you'll make me and Emily happy parents if you agree. And the doctors won't have any complaints about your health. Kate sat silent. She didn't know what to answer this man. Thoughts in her head were jumping around like fleas, and her tongue was swirling with many questions. I am in no hurry to give you an answer, David said softly. You can think about it, but don't take your time. Please, if you really want to save your grandmother, time is playing against her immediately. The man spoke softly, keeping his eyes on Kate. He knew where to push, knew what words to say to get his way. I can go, Kate suddenly spoke, coming out of her stupor. You can, David answered. But promise me you'll think about it. You promise. She nodded, pushing the door to get out of the car. Stop, said David. and Kate immediately turned around. "Take this." He held out her business card and thought to call. "I will wait, hoping that you will make the right decision." Kate didn't answer anything, and she turned silently toward her house, her thoughts confused in her head. She could not realize that everything that was happening was true. "Grandma, I'm home," shouted the girl, turning on the light in the hallway. "You're late tonight," muttered the old woman as she appeared in the hallway. "I was warming dinner, and it got cold again. You get undressed, then, and I'll go. I have a soap opera starting." "They'll go, smiling," said Kate. "Grandma, how are you feeling today? Have you been taking your medicine?" "I did, granddaughter, but they don't help much. Today, I even called an ambulance. They gave me an injection. It got better. Why didn't you call me?" "I would have come." Upset, Kate asked. "I didn't want to bother you, honey. Don't worry, you're fine now. Go eat and go to bed. You should be resting." Looking fondly at her granddaughter, the woman said. But that night, Kate did not sleep. She went over and over in her mind the conversation with David. And the more Kate thought about it, the clearer she knew she had to agree. It was the only chance for her to save her grandmother, to give her loved one a few more years of life. After all, if I agreed, not only would I be able to pay for her surgery, but I would make two people happy, David and his wife. I reasoned with Kate, or rather persuaded herself, so without making any decision, she fell asleep, not yet knowing what trials fate had prepared for her. For the next few days, Kate drove thoughts of talking to David away as best she could. Probably the girl would never dare to do anything. She gradually forgot about this strange situation. But David called her himself. Kate no longer wondered where the man got her number, realizing that he knew much more than he was saying. "Hello, Kate. This is David. I hope you remember me. Have you thought about my offer?" he asked. Kate could tell by his voice that the man was worried, but he was trying not to show it. She answered quietly, "But I'm sorry, I can't agree to that. It's not right. It's unnatural. I can't. I'm sorry, babbling girl." "Yeah, and I thought you were smart. You loved your grandmother. You wanted to help her. I'm sorry I was wrong," said David. "Goodbye," answered Kate. She wanted to be rude to the man, but she tolerated it. Kate was clever enough and understood everything very well. David, unaccustomed to rejection, and also to the fact that his clever tricks did not work. He was a little confused, but then, pulling himself together, he said, "Listen, Kate, let's do this. You may not agree to surrogacy yet. You just have to be examined by doctors for us to know for sure if you are suitable or not. What if the doctors say you're not suitable to be a surrogate mother? Then we won't get our hopes up either. And refusing, I ask all the doctors, I'll pay for you too, and I'll give you money for your trouble. You agree?" Here Kate hesitated briefly. The money David was promising her was quite impressive for Kate, so she decided that she could have an examination, and if she was not fit for health reasons, she could forget about the whole story. But if she was all right then Kate didn't know what to do. Or rather, she already had a solution in her head, but she was afraid to voice it, even to herself. And now for the third week, Kate was examined at the medical center. She had a variety of tests taken, ultrasounds taken. The girl talked to a psychologist and a bunch of different specialists. Sometimes she had to answer very painful questions. One of those was the question about her baby. "I have to tell you what happened to my son." With a heavy sigh, Kate asked. "To be honest, no," just answered the psychologist. "But as a specialist, I can see that you are tormented by it. Tell me, and it will become easier." After thinking for a few minutes, Kate started her story. "I got pregnant when I was 17, she said, looking at the wall opposite. Jacob was older than me. He was in his 20s. When he found out I was pregnant, he asked me to marry him. We got married and went to a neighboring region, since Jacob was from there. We lived well. Jacob worked, I stayed home, cooked, ate, kept the family together. It got harder when my son was born." The girl continued monotonously. "Ethan was a restless baby, cried a lot. He didn't sleep well. I was terribly tired. Confused day and night. Jacob didn't get much sleep either. My husband and I started fighting. Jacob could freak out, not come home, spend the night. to be rude. I put up with it. There was no one to help us. My parents died when I was a baby. My grandmother lived in another town. All in all, our family was slowly falling apart. But when Ethan was 6 months old, everything changed. He became calmer. He didn't sleep well, but he rarely screamed. I became calmer and more restrained. And my husband, feeling guilty for the rudeness he used to let me do, became softer, didn't he? He began to help. Life has improved. When my son was a year and a half old, they took him to daycare. I got a part-time job. On the day of the accident, I was at work. Ethan was picked up from daycare by Jacob. Kate was silent for a moment. Gathering her thoughts, it was hard for her to talk about what had happened. But she knew that since she had begun, she had to finish it. Find the strength to tell it all. Jacob picked Ethan up from daycare. It was summer. Her husband decided to take his son to the pond. Ethan loved the water. My son was playing. I don't know what happened. But when I was on my way home from work, my husband called me and told me that Ethan was gone. Kate cried. My son had drowned. There was no way to save him. From that day on, the worst time of my life began. I dreamed about Ethan every night. He was calling to me. I was diving for him in the water, trying to save him. But I couldn't. Kate snapped into a scream, and the psychologist listened to her attentively, handed the visitor a glass of water. Drink it, he said. Kate drank some water, put the glass on the table, and spoke again. And I was slowly going crazy. I couldn't see Jacob. I didn't blame him for anything. I could see that he was suffering too. But I couldn't live with him either. My husband was a living reminder of my son, of his death. So I filed for divorce and came back here to my hometown. Especially since my beloved grandmother, the only person I knew in the world, lived here. Here I was able to forget myself a little. The work of studying, caring for my grandmother distracted me from my terrible thoughts. But I don't forget my beloved boy for a minute. About my little boy. They say that time heals. But I guess it doesn't work in my case. Kate kept silent with her whole appearance, showing that the conversation was over. In a week, the girl had the conclusion that she is suitable for the role of a surrogate mother. Even the psychologist gave a good conclusion. He did a lot of testing on the girl. The man had to make sure that the patient would be able to give the baby to the biological parents after delivery. Kate. All the tests were successful, and the psychologist was confident that the girl would be able to fulfill all the conditions of the contract. On the same day Kate received the report, David, I have already been informed that you are the perfect surrogate mother, said the man into the tube. I hope you won't persist. I hope you'll agree to carry and give birth to my wife and me. Kate was silent, so David had to repeat his question. Kate, will you be a surrogate for our child? Yes, calmly answered the girl. But I have a condition. And what is that? In a slightly tense voice, David asked. This is not a telephone conversation. Kate cut him off. Let's meet and discuss everything face to face. So what is your condition of waiting? Looking at Kate, David asked. I know that with a surrogacy contract, the main fee is paid after I give birth to the baby. But I am not happy with that option. I need the money. I want to save my grandmother. So I will agree to your proposals only on the condition that I will receive a part of the fee. As soon as the ultrasound shows that the baby is healthy, developing normally. Stiffly spoke Kate, looking into David's eyes. The man grinned. He underestimated Kate. David saw her as a young fool. She turned out to be one with a determined grip. It amazed and delighted him at the same time. All right, I'll talk to the lawyers about it. But if anything goes wrong during the pregnancy, accidental miscarriage, how will you pay the money back? Asked David, carefully watching Kate's reaction. I hope that everything will be all right. But if something suddenly happens, I'll decide according to the circumstances. I'll give you the money in installments. I'll change my apartment. I'll take a loan. I don't want to think about bad things, said the girl. David sat in silence, thinking about his own things. And then he said, if that's your only condition. Yes, I agree. We'll talk about all the nuances with my lawyers, as well as lawyers, clinics, and call you agreed. Agreed. Kate nodded and hurriedly left the cafe. 2 weeks passed after Kate and David talked. the girl returned to her usual life, studying and working, taking care of her grandmother. David didn't call, and Kate already thought that he had given up on the idea. But soon the phone rang. All the papers are ready. If you have not changed your mind, let's meet tomorrow at the clinic to discuss everything again and to sign our contract, David said into the receiver of the phone. I haven't changed my mind, Kate muttered, and her heart raced. Tomorrow I will come to the clinic the next day. The girl sat in the doctor's office and carefully studied the documents. Kate did not have the money for a good lawyer, so she hoped for the honesty and competence of the lawyers of the medical institution. According to the contract, Kate was supposed to receive part of the fee after the ultrasound at 12 weeks, and the second part after delivery. In addition, the girl was to be paid a monthly allowance, and all examinations were to be done at David's expense. And finding no catch, Kate signed the documents. The girl hoped that after all the papers had been signed, she would have some peace of mind. But on the contrary, her excitement only increased. To get at least some peace of mind, Kate convinced herself to do a good deed. And it didn't help much, as time went on. And then came day X. Kate produced 500 embryos. From that day on, the girl knew she had no way back. She could only wait and hope that everything would be successful. She wouldn't know until 3 weeks later. David called her each time to ask how she was doing. Emily also called a couple of times. These people had high hopes for Kate, and it was a little embarrassing. The girl was pressed mentally, but she had no time to doubt. Her grandmother's condition had worsened. She understood that her grandmother needed urgent surgery. After talking to the doctor, the girl asked him to schedule the surgery as soon as possible. Hopefully, by then she would have the money to pay for everything. Lying on the couch in the ultrasound room, Kate was shaking her whole body. The blood test showed that she was pregnant, and she had already had her first ultrasound. For some reason, she thought something was going wrong. Kate didn't have the same feelings she had when she carried her Ethan. In her first pregnancy, Kate felt sick from almost the first weeks, dizzy and nauseous. But nothing here. I guess if her grandmother hadn't needed the surgery, Kate wouldn't have agreed to be a surrogate. As it was, she had no choice. So Kate quietly prayed that everything would work out well. She already had to pay the money for the surgery. And if the child has a problem, then congratulations, it all worked out. The doctor's voice broke into Kate's thoughts. The fetus is one. And as far as I can see, it's a developmental boy. It's all good. I am happy with that. The man finished his speech. Get up, get out, and you can go. The day after the ultrasound, the money from David arrived on Kate's card. The man was happy. He was happy that everything had gone well, but he was especially happy about the fact that Kate was carrying a son. The girl was also happy about the fact that she now had money. The first few months of pregnancy flew by unnoticed. Kate was so busy taking care of her grandmother that if it were not for the doctors at the medical center, she would have forgotten to do tests and go to routine appointments. Kate didn't need to work. She received a monthly allowance, which was enough not only for quality food, but also to pay for utilities, medicine, and everything else she needed. Kate's life went on at a steady pace, right up until the baby began to move. Those light touches brought back memories of her first pregnancy, of her dead son. A time when she was happy. With each passing day, Kate found it harder and harder to adjust herself to the fact that she was carrying someone else's baby, a baby to be given away. She felt love for the man developing under her heart and couldn't help herself. One day, visiting the medical center, Kate could not stand it and went to see the lawyers. "Can you tell me if I want to take the child I am hesitating?" asked the girl. "You can, but you will have to pay a big fine. You have signed a contract." Staring at Kate, said the lawyer, "But frankly speaking, I don't advise you to do it. You'll make a lot of trouble for yourself. You knew what you were doing." Sadly, he nodded. The girl left the lawyer's office and, at home, lying in her room, burst into tears. At her granddaughter's crying, her grandmother came in. "Well, why are you convinced?" quietly asked the grandmother. "You do not want to give the child away." Somehow the grandmother guessed. Looking at the old woman, asked Kate, "What am I, stupid? I was pregnant myself. I know how you feel. Just treat it differently. I mean, when I heard from you what you were doing to make money, I was against it. It's not human. And then I thought, Kate, you are doing a good job helping people, so treat it that way. Give people joy and the opportunity to become parents without depriving them of it. Gently stroking her granddaughter's head, the woman said, "It is unknown what affected Kate, whether it was her grandmother's words or something else. But it was as if she calmed it down, trying not to think about the fact that she would soon give birth and give her baby son, whom she already considered her own. Kate hadn't been feeling well for the past few days. Her stomach was tight and her back was hurting. Although the doctors assured her that the delivery was still more than a week away, but to be on the safe side, they put Kate in the hospital. The girl knew that David called the clinic daily to find out if Kate had given birth. She hadn't yet. The birth began unexpectedly. It was nighttime. Kate got up to go to the bathroom and her water broke. She had no fear or panic. There was only pain, tearing her body apart. Kate screamed, cried, moaned, but it didn't get any easier. She was relieved only when the doctor put her on an IV, after which Kate forgot herself for a few hours. Waking up was hard, and the contractions were unbearable. "Be patient," the doctor said, examining Kate. "A little more and we'll give birth." I wish the girl would hurry up, whispering in pain. An hour passed, and Kate felt a flood of sensations, hard to mistake for anything else. Barely born, the baby let out a triumphant cry, and the doctor nodded satisfactorily. Handing over the newborn, "I can't." The boy weighed 8,157 pounds and was 1.8 feet tall, the technician said. Kate smiled blissfully. "And you put the baby to the breast?" Quietly she asked. "It is not allowed." Strictly, said the doctor. "But at least show it to me," Kate whispered, fighting back tears. The doctor silently picked up the baby and held it for a few seconds so that Kate could see the baby. Then he picked up the newborn and took it somewhere. "Why did you take him away?" "I'm not going to lie down with him." Kate started asking questions. "No, everything you had to do, you did. You won't see that baby again," sternly spoke the doctor. "And in fact, stop talking, resting after childbirth." But Kate did not feel tired. All her thoughts were occupied with the baby, and seeing his heart, the girl was filled with so much love and tenderness that she now could not imagine how she would live without this newborn boy. An hour later, Kate was already lying in a separate room. She felt sad. The girl wondered if she would be able to pay David back if she took the baby with her. The more Kate thought about it, the more she realized that there was no way she could get that kind of money. After all, not only did she need to pay back the money she received after the ultrasound, but all the money she received for support. Even if Kate sold the apartment she and her grandmother lived in, there still wouldn't be enough money, and to sell her only home. The girl couldn't afford it. Kate probably would have been chasing heavy thoughts in her head for a long time, but then the door of her room opened and a middle-aged man appeared on the threshold. He introduced himself as a lawyer. "Hello," said the man as he entered the room. "I understand that you just had a baby, but David is very nervous and wants to register his son as soon as possible. So sign the paper that you are allowing the biological parents to register." "Shut up," rudely interrupted him Kate. "Let me sign whatever is required and go away. Let me rest badly without you." Kate quickly signed all the papers and turned back against the wall, choking back bitter tears. Now there was no way back for her. That wasn't all. The man continued, paying no attention to the mood of the girl. "David asked me to give you this." He put the envelope on the table and left the room. The woman, who had calmed down, got up and opened the letter. "Thank you very much, Kate, for what you have done for us. Today I became a father and the happiest man in the world. Emily and I are very grateful to you. In the envelope you will find a trip to rest, recuperate, and come to your senses. I think you need it. Choose the date of the trip yourself on the phone number on the form. About work, do not worry. When you come back, call me, and we will get you a better position. Thank you so much again." Kate angrily threw back the piece of paper and sobbed, realizing that she could not take someone else's child. And her heart cried out that this baby was hers. She carried it. She had given birth to him. But the mind said otherwise. For the first week after discharge, she was not herself. The girl didn't want to do anything. She just ate and slept and slept and ate. Her grandmother tried to shake her granddaughter up, but Kate just shrugged her off. Every second, she remembered the face of the baby, the boy she had given birth to, and whom she had lost. But a week passed, followed by a second, and Kate began to come alive. It was getting harder and harder for her to remember the baby's face, but she didn't forget about it. She just tried to think a little less, a little more aloof. Kate understood that she could be sad forever, but life went on. "Kate, granddaughter, why don't you go on a vacation?" Her grandmother said, looking at her granddaughter's emotional torment. "Well, what's the point of wasting good things? You were given a trip to relax. After all, 21 days at sea has never hurt anyone. And a change of scenery will help you distract yourself. I'll think about it, Grandma," Kate said softly. "Maybe you're right." A week later, she woke up in a suite with a beautiful view of the sea. Kate stretched herself and thought how great it was. It was her first time at the sea and already in such a luxurious room. Of course, the girl herself would never be able to afford it. After a quick shower and breakfast, she ran to the beach with a brightly colored bag and a hat, bought especially for the resort, and of course, sunglasses. Girl, it was very pretty. A long skirt with a slit in the front. It showed off her long, slender legs. True, not yet tanned, but it did not lose any of its appeal. Several of the chaise lounges were still vacant. She threw her clothes on one of them and walked toward the sea. Kate raised her face to the sun, and her thoughts flowed as the warm sea flowed, the gentle waves stroking the rocks that reached near the shore, enveloping them with loving foam. The water is lovely. The mood is great. Kate stood there with her face exposed to the sun. The girl is like water. She replied wonderfully, without even turning around. "You must be new. I haven't seen you before." God, she didn't want to be distracted from her thoughts and the warm sun, did she? She reluctantly opened her eyes and turned in the direction from which the question had come. Standing in front of her was a man clearly 10 years older than her. He was handsome, very handsome in fact. His smile was charming. She had been staring at his face and had completely forgotten about the question he had asked her. "Are you all right, young lady?" the stranger asked, and Kate came back down to earth. "It's my first day. My vacation has just begun." She smiled. "And I am the third day here. You will like the sea and the service at the hotel. And let's get acquainted. I'm Thomas." And he held out his hand for a handshake. She thought for a moment whether she should meet the first guy she met on the very first day, and much older. And then she decided why not. After all, she came to relax, unwind, distract, which means she can do whatever she wants. "I'm Kate." She shook his hand, inviting him to the restaurant for dinner tonight. "We'll listen to live music. We'll dance if the lady wants, and then I'll walk you out. How do you like my plan?" "I like it," answered Kate. We meet in front of the restaurant. 18 days flew by like one. Thomas was an extraordinary man, intelligent, generous with life experience, which made him an interesting conversationalist. Kate fell head over heels in love, and love sometimes takes away the mind. It wasn't some kind of episode and resort infatuation, at least not on her part. Thomas was flying out late tonight, so they were having a farewell party. And as luck would have it, on her birthday, he showed up at the restaurant with a huge bouquet of roses. There were 5 red roses in the middle of this bouquet, and white roses all around. In his hands was a beautiful box. Kate was very upset that he had left. She didn't want to leave Thomas. She was fine with him. Now they were going away to different ends of our immense motherland. He lived in Chicago. He was the CEO of a big company. She went back to Enmai to visit her grandmother. She had no chance of returning to this resort, nor to any other resort. Pressed against him with her whole body, she cried softly. Kate knew that they would never meet again. He kissed her tenderly and told her that they would see each other soon, and that distance was not an obstacle. "When you tell me when I will see you, tell me the date," she whispered. "I will not tell you the date. It has not yet been determined. And the month of November. My God, that's an eternity. You are out of your mind." The man smiled his disarming smile. He liked that she already missed him honestly, and he didn't want to lose her and let her go for a long time. Thomas realized this was his woman, and he would do anything to be with her. He opened the box, and in it was a shell of extraordinary beauty. "This is your favorite." Thomas kissed her. She demanded more and more. Kate wanted to sate herself with it, so she could consume it little by little and stretch it until November. She pulled him into the room to feel and remember his scent one last time, his embrace and his kiss. She fell asleep and didn't hear Thomas leave the room. In the morning, she saw a little note on the table from him. "Beloved, don't miss him, and we'll meet soon." She put it in a shell box so she wouldn't lose it and cried again. Only now she realized that her grandmother had been right. She had been so distracted at the resort that she had never once thought of the child, without whom she had not imagined life a couple of months before. She was able to switch gears, and it was the right thing to do. But now there was a new problem. Kate is in love, but he's gone, and will they meet in the future or not? That's the big question. Maybe he was just saying things to make her feel better. The days without Thomas at the resort dragged on. She seemed to spend the rest of her time endlessly on the beach, enjoying the warm sea and the soft sand. Young men came up to her, wanting to get to know her, but they were all so pathetic, uninterested, that she didn't even dignify them with a glance. And 3 days later, Kate was already at home and was telling her grandmother about her amazing vacation. A couple of days later, David called and dictated the address where Kate was to go for an interview. It was a huge office. "A friend of mine works there," the man explained over the phone. "Find Robert. Tell him it's from me. He needs an assistant. He's a decent man. You're a girl, far from stupid. I think with a job here. And life's a whirlwind. New job, new experiences." Things seemed to be getting better, but Kate couldn't get Thomas out of her mind. They called and texted each other, of course, but it wasn't that. She wanted to see him, to hold him, to kiss him, to feel the warmth of his hands and the tenderness of his lips. And then the long-awaited November came. She waited every day for messages about his arrival. But there were no messages. She was nearing the end of a call when her phone vibrated. "I'm here, staying at the hotel, waiting for you." Driving up to the hotel, Kate called him. Thomas met her at the front door, and they went up to the room, hanging on him again like a child. She covered his face with kisses and cried in part. After calming down, the girl asked him how long he was here for. "A week," the man answered. Just for a week. She was ready to kill him. "Thomas, well, at least for 10 days. Will you stay well for 10 days? He smiled. Her joy was boundless. For 10 whole days, she would be with the man she loved. What a gift that was. The lovers couldn't get enough of talking and looking at each other. She hugged him, and he exploded in her gorgeous hair and kissed her neck. She enjoyed listening to the tender and affectionate words he whispered, complimenting them with kisses. No force could separate them even at this moment. When he was about to leave, Kate asked, "And how New Year's Eve can't you come? After all, the vacations will be long." Thomas looked at her sadly and promised to get away. She didn't go to the airport to see him off. She didn't like send-offs. They were always sad. For a whole month, they talked on Skype. It was always him calling, explaining that as soon as he had a free minute, he would dial her number right away. Kate never asked Thomas about his family. She was afraid to hear the answer. There was little chance that such a man could be available. And to hear that he was married, happy, raising 2 children and a dog. The young woman didn't want to, preferring to remain in the dark and believe in miracles. As the saying goes, no less, sleep better. And on the other hand, if he comes to her, it means that all is not well in the family. It means that he does not have enough love, affection, attention. On December 24, she waited for him all day, not letting the phone out of her hands. But he did not come, did not call, and did not congratulate her. It was the worst Christmas of Kate's life. She stayed home, didn't want to go anywhere, although coworkers invited her to the holiday. On December 25, early in the morning, a woman woke up. Her grandmother said she had a phone call. Kate reluctantly picked up the phone and immediately jumped up like scalded. Hearing "Good morning, my love. Merry Christmas. I'm down at your doorstep." She put on a nightgown and a fur coat and jumped out into the street starry from his embrace and cold hands. But she was happy. They went up to the apartment, and Kate finally. She was able to introduce her lover to her grandmother. The lovers spent the entire first day of Christmas together. And in the evening, he flew back. Only when he left did Kate see the large package that Thomas had left. When she opened it, she saw presents: a small bottle of French perfume, a beautiful, warm scarf, a jar of red, black caviar, big red fish, champagne, and candy. Picking up the gifts in an armful, she cried. "Why are you crying?" asked Granny. "He came to congratulate. Took a couple of hours to see you. It is beautiful. No need to cry. Tell me more about him." "I liked Thomas very much." Kate smiled sadly. "How could you not like him?" "Grandma. And they talked about him all evening." "You should, of course. You don't ask about his family." Grandma shook her head. "But that's his own business," Kate said quietly and averted her eyes to the side. "Of course it is. But you ask, at least you will know for yourself what status you are in and what you can count on. It's not like you're forcing him to do anything. But I think you have a right to know." Kate nodded. "I promised to think about it." But the more she thought about it, the more she came to think that Grandma was right. And so when they called again on a face-to-face, improving the moment, Kate decided to ask him why they couldn't be together forever if they loved each other so much. "Kitten, I have a sick wife who has had several female surgeries. She lives 3 to 4 months at a time in the hospital. She is supported there. Then I bring her home. The housekeeper takes care of the house, because my wife can't take on that kind of work. The cook cooks lunches and dinners. I have a son. He is 22 years old. He is already an adult. My wife lives with me in the house. I can't leave her. I am the only one who earns money. She needs expensive medicine. My wife is in a private clinic. That's where she had the surgery. She can't take care of herself. Her bathing, haircutting, all at home. So my girl, forgive me if you now say that you are fed up with everything. I will understand you, of course. I will worry. But I understand. You need to arrange your life, have children, and I distract you with my love. I guess that's not fair. It turns out I'm selfish. I'm very happy with you and I love you. But circumstances." They talked for a couple more minutes, and he said goodbye and hung up, giving Kate time to think. He only asked her to write him to tell him what decision she would make. Thomas sincerely loved this man, and he had no right to force her to live by his rules. The woman's age is short, and she, like all women, had a right to a family and a woman's happiness. That same evening, Thomas received a call from his son, informing him that his mother had gotten worse, and the ambulance had taken her to the hospital. The man immediately rushed to follow. Kate stayed up all night. They couldn't be together. How would she survive it? Would she have to? Let things be as they were. She's fine with it. She couldn't love anyone else anyway. Everyone will pale in comparison to Thomas. Now she will call him and tell him. Kate rehearsed several times in front of the mirror how she would inform him of her decision. "Thomas, I've decided I'm fine with everything, so let's leave it the way it was. You don't have to change anything. I don't want to take you out of the family, and I'll never ask questions about it again." Yes, that's exactly what I should say. With trembling hands, she dialed his number again. But Long listened to beeps on the other end of the line and did not wait for an answer. She could not control her emotions, and the girl burst into tears. Immediately, my grandmother came running. "It's all your fault," stubbornly Kate said. "If I hadn't been prying into his soul with my questions, he would have been with me. And now Thomas isn't picking up the phone. What for? I only listened to you." Grandma stroked, sobbing still on her granddaughter's hair, and just whispered that everything would get better. "Kate, everything will be all right. You will see." A week passed, but Thomas didn't call. Kate was beginning to think he'd run away from her. Why didn't he call? 3 words would have said all right. No more. The man called 10 days later, saying he had managed to save his wife. Kate had it ready to roll off her tongue. "Why did you save her? She's a plant anyway." But the girl stopped in time and thought she was committing a sin. It's not for her to decide whether a man lives or dies. There's a heavenly office for that. They all know. She mentally asked God to forgive her and thought no more about it. If Thomas says it's time for her to have the baby, fine. She doesn't mind at all, but the baby will be his. She won't even tell him about her decision so he can relax and enjoy it. She won't use birth control anymore. If they're not meant to be together, she'll still have a little piece of him. What a great idea, what a great idea. I should have done this last year. The baby would have been a few months old this year. She was in a better mood. She was pleased with herself when she told her grandmother everything. She felt better. But her grandmother did not approve of her plan. You need to get on with your life, not wait for grace from another person. But Kate only waved her hand. She liked her plan too much to give it up so easily. There was a lot to do at work. A whirlwind swirled through her, preventing her from thinking about anything else and from relaxing. It was as if Thomas had disappeared, didn't call on FaceTime, didn't get in touch. Kate was very worried, but afraid to call herself. Something might have happened there again. He came to see her on December 24th, without warning, and then he came over. All that time he was with his wife. He hired a nurse, and they switched. His wife has become very weak, she says quietly. Quietly, you have to bend over to understand what she wants. My son and his wife have gone to a ski resort to celebrate Christmas. She's sleeping more and more, and I thought I'd say hello to you. To spend the last day of the year with you. And meet the first. And then I'll fly away again, Thomas said, hugging Kate. She and her grandmother had a glass of champagne and went for a walk around New Year's Eve in NMI. Then they got a hotel room and had a magical New Year's Eve. Kate knew that night would give her a baby with the man she loved. They stayed up late at the restaurant having a cup of coffee, and Thomas flew home. And Kate felt that she was no longer alone, that a part of her beloved was in her. Soon a pregnancy test showed the coveted 2 stripes. She was happy. Kate got registered and did everything the doctor advised her to do. They started talking to Thomas. He was telling me that his wife was getting better. She is sitting up and he can take her out to the garden for a walk. He can't spend a lot of time with her. My wife's work requires her to be there all the time, but she is not alone. She is well cared for. Kate also shared her news with him, but not a worry about the pregnancy. Summer was approaching, and they agreed to meet at the same place where they first met. Now Kate could afford to vacation at any resort. She looked wonderful. Her tummy was small, though it was already quite visible. This time he arrived early and met her at the airport. Seeing Kate from afar, he waved a bouquet of roses at her. But when she appeared in front of him at full size, he couldn't utter a word. Did you have any changes in your personal life? He asked her with surprise. Yes, I'm going to be a mother. You said I had to think about the future. It's time to have a baby. The feminine age is so short, so I listened to you. I did the right thing, she said, and she looked at him with interest. Where's the daddy to be? Didn't he come? He's here. Daddy is wonderful, very caring and handsome, and he loves me very much. Kate smiled with all her 32 teeth. Maybe I came here for nothing. My husband will probably be displeased. Well, he's not a husband yet, unfortunately, but only a father. But I really want him to be my husband. We can't introduce me yet. Thomas was clearly upset. He rode in the car and was silent. Kate hugged him, kissed him, and lay on his shoulder. Thomas was surprised and delighted at the same time. Walking into the room, he asked where the father-to-be was. She led him to the mirror, hugged him, and said, "Here he is and the other dad. We don't need just that." She laughed her infectious laugh. He laughed, too, but he didn't seem to dare, as if he were waiting for a catch. But there was none, and he knew it was true. "Have you stopped taking precautions?" he asked, clearly satisfied. "Yes, ever since you told me I had to have the baby. It's a New Year's surprise." "Exactly," she answered. "And who are we waiting for?" Thomas asked with interest. "Who do you want? Anything from you. I will love both a boy and a girl." "We will have a girl with a kind of warmth and love," whispered Kate. He was happy. "You know, Kate, I was afraid I was seeing you for the last time. It proves once again that I am the first mortal egoist. Not some, not selfish, and our beloved daddy. I love you very much, and I don't need anyone else. Remember that, and don't ever doubt me." He was glad to hear those words. Kate was also the greatest love of his life, so he would be a father for the second time. In the evening, they went down to the sea to sit and breathe the sea air. How beautiful it is to look at the sea at sunset. They gazed for a long time at the water, at the beautiful moonlight. The light trembled in the wild waves and sparkled like rock crystal. They listened to the music of the waves, their quiet whirring mesmerizing. The sea spoke to them, rejoiced in their happiness, and the waves were getting so close to them. Quietly, they refused to go back, didn't get their feet wet. It was a beautiful time. The girl was born on time. The birth was surprisingly easy. Kate was very sleepy. She was tired, but a call to Grandma. She had to do it. Congratulations to Grandma, and became a great-grandmother. A great-granddaughter was born. Please call Thomas. Kate overslept because she hadn't felt well the night before and couldn't sleep. Now her strength has been restored and a baby girl has been brought to her. Such a beauty I have never seen before, said the nurse. That's what he said when he came to ask how she was feeling. She does not look much like you. Your daddy must be a handsome man. Yes, our daddy is wonderful, handsome. The next day, when her daughter was first brought in, the door opened and a huge basket of flowers was brought in, then fruit. And then she already saw Thomas. How handsome he was in the white turtleneck that took away his tanned skin, and the jeans that sat on him. You could put him on a runway like that. The doctor came in behind him just as the parents were kissing. But now I understand why the baby is so beautiful. You can see he looks just like his father. The girl was born small at only 6.1 pounds and 1.6 feet tall. There was no end to the joy. I flew to NI for a conference. Your grandmother called just as the plane landed. I was very happy with the news. Now I am running off to the conference. Then I'll come to you again. Come, we'll be waiting for you, Kate said. The girl was named Emily, and Mom and Dad couldn't wait to have their Chad. 6 months later, Thomas called to say that his wife had passed away. Kate felt sorry for that poor woman, though they did not know each other personally. She understood from Thomas's story that his wife had been a kind and compassionate person. Life had just worked out that way, and now he was free, which meant there was nothing stopping them from being together. He said he would settle the funeral soon and come to visit them in NY in about a month. But Kate didn't know yet that her life could be turned upside down in one day. That evening, Kate, after putting her daughter to bed, heard sounds coming from her grandmother's room. Looking into the room, the woman smiled as always. Grandmother was already dozing peacefully to the working TV. Kate picked up the remote to turn it off, but then her gaze caught the picture that was on the screen. 2 cars turned into a pile of metal, with a fire truck, an ambulance, and a crowd of people nearby. At 8 p.m. today, there was a serious accident on the Beltway, the announcer said, and Kate stared fearfully. One of the cars was painfully familiar. A terrible hunch struck her, and a few minutes later the man with the microphone confirmed it all. As a result of the tragedy, the well-known businessman David and his wife were also killed. But next Kate was no longer listening to the narrator. She quietly whispered, "Baby, where is their baby? What are you saying?" Opened her eyes, dozed in the chair. "Granny, nothing, nothing. Grandma, rest." That's how I try to remove the nervous tremor from my voice, Kate mumbled and quickly left the hall. Taking the phone, she began to actively dig through the list of contacts. Kate remembered that she had saved the phone number of a lawyer who worked for David. It was the only person she could find out anything from. Kate felt sorry for David and Emily, but she was even more concerned about the child's life. Finding the phone, she began to call. As soon as the man's voice came through the receiver, she spoke. "Hello, Benjamin. This is Kate. We have met. I was carrying a baby for David and his wife. Hello, Kate. What do you want?" Seemingly unsurprised by the girl's call, asked the man. "I had heard about the accident that killed David and his wife, but I didn't understand if the baby was in the car with them." "No, there was no child in the car. Alex was at home with us. Alex is the son of David and his wife for some reason," the man clarified. Although Kate understood it all anyway. "And tell me," a little hesitantly, Kate asked, "and what will happen to Alexei?" "I do not know," answered Benjamin honestly. While Alex is sitting, I do not know what will happen next. I'll try to find some of the relatives. But as far as I know, Emily and David have no relatives left. They're all long dead. So if there are no relatives, then the baby is going straight to the orphanage. Kate clarified. Most likely, said the man, hesitating a little. Benjamin, said Kate. If you do not find any relatives who would be willing to take Alex to themselves, let me know. I will do my best to get the boy. After all, I carried him. Kate finished quietly. And don't think I'll pay you, just don't forget. Tell me. Kate, don't worry, I'll let you know. I don't need to be paid. I've been working for David for a long time, and I owe him a lot. So taking care of his child is the least I can do. What can I do? I'll be sure to let you know as soon as I know something. The man finished speaking. Days dragged on and on. Kate couldn't find her place with excitement. In 2 days, Thomas was due to arrive, and she didn't know how he would react to the news that she had decided to take her former boss's baby with her. Kate never told Thomas about this episode of her life. He knew about the death of the first baby, but he had no idea that she was carrying the child as a surrogate. Not everyone gets this process right. When he arrived, he told Katya from the very doorstep to get her passport, and they were going to the registry office. We need to legalize the relationship. If you don't mind, it would be wonderful to move to my place in Vladivostok. We can take Grandma with us. Thomas smiled and kissed Kate. Aren't you glad? He asked when he saw her sad look, or changed his mind. What's wrong? Thomas, you see, the thing is, the woman began carefully to choose her words. I've decided to adopt. What do you mean you've decided? The man looked at her with puzzled eyes. What child? How do you know about him? What the hell is going on? Kate took him by the hand, led him into the room, and sat him down on the couch. She sat down next to him. You listen to me now and do not interrupt, she said calmly. And then you will ask all the questions. If you leave after that, I'll understand. And gathering more air in her lungs, she began her long story. Thomas listened attentively, and then stood up, walked to the window, and was silent for a long time, staring into the distance. Finally, he turned and looked at Kate with a serious look in his eyes. You know, at last, he said, I am astonished at you. Kate, hearing these words, felt cold. This is the end, she thought. Thomas, after a short pause, continued. I am amazed at your generosity and kindness. Not to abandon this baby, to take on such responsibility, having one of your own, and not being afraid to ruin your own personal life. That's certainly brave. And if you don't mind, I'd like to support you in this endeavor, especially since a married woman has a much better chance of being allowed to adopt him. So you can't do it without me. Smugly, the man smiled and opened his arms for a hug. I don't remember myself from happiness. Kate immediately rushed to him and hung on him, wrapping her arms around his neck. How could she think that he would leave her? After all, he was the best man in the world. That same day, Kate and Thomas applied to the registry office. They had originally been told to wait a month, which was a very long time in their case. So, leaving Kate alone, Thomas went up to the second floor and, returning 20 minutes later, pretty much informed them that they would be married in 5 days, as only Kate could ask, losing her breath with happiness. And this is my secret. Darkness to the news of her clap, and they went outside. 2 weeks passed. Benjamin the lawyer never called. And getting up the courage, Kate called herself. Hello, it's Kate, she just said into the phone. I didn't wait for your call, so I decided to do it myself. Hello, Kate. I didn't call because I didn't have much to cheer you up with. There is some very distant relative of David, and she wants to take the baby. She does? What? The girl was impatient and hurriedly Benjamin. You see, I get the feeling that this lady is not after the baby, but the money. After all, Alex is the only heir to everything that belongs to David. And that, believe me, is no small thing. Do you think that this woman would hurt the baby? Kate asked in a trembling voice. I don't know, the man answered after thinking for a while. She is very strange. She is always twitching, shouting that she is David's only relative, showing everyone old pictures. She has no other proof of kinship. What if she is a fraud? Quietly asked the women. That's what I'm trying to find out for now, Benjamin muttered. And where is Alex now? At home, but we can't keep him with the nanny any longer. So we have to go to the child welfare authorities, the man said with a sigh. Listen, let me also start collecting documents to take the cart to me. Give it a try. If you need any help, call me. Benjamin answered and hung up. Kate immediately became very active and started gathering all the necessary papers to take the boy to her. Only at the drugstore. She was told openly that Kate probably had little chance, since there was a distant relative, and that is preferable than a stranger's aunt, which Kate was. Thomas reassured her as best he could and offered to make inquiries about this distant relative. Benjamin had already figured it out. Kate shrugged her shoulders. Why would several people do the same job? She looked intently at her husband. You don't get it. A lawyer can do his job, and we won't get in his way. We'll make inquiries about her. Private inquiries. We'll go to the agency. We'll hire a detective, and he'll bring us the paperwork in a couple of days with all the details of this relative. If she really is a relative, no questions asked. And if she's lying, we'll be 110% sure. How's that sound? Go for it. Kate smiled. I agree. I'll fight for this boy. After all, I once gave birth to him. And if it were not for the David trip, you and I would never have met. And within a week, the detective had come up with some very interesting information. Turns out, Thomas told Kate that she was not related to him at all. In fact, David has a third cousin, Maria. Only she had been drinking for a long time, and they won't give the baby to her. And this imposter is Maria's neighbor. She found out that David and his wife are dead and decided to pass herself off as Maria to get the cart. She doesn't want the kid, but she does need the money. What's going to happen now? Kate gasped. In hand? Nothing. It's simple. We'll take these documents to Benjamin and wait for the trial. I'm sure you have a good chance of success. Yes, I think if that imposter finds out that we know everything, she won't even come to court. Thomas was right. Everything happened just as he thought it would. And after the first hearing, Kate was recognized as the boy's legal guardian. Her happiness was boundless, and Alex was a very calm child, immediately found common ground with Emily, and looking at them, one would have thought that the two had known each other all their lives. Kate showed the suitcases, and when Thomas entered the room, the children were asleep. In a whisper, he said, Let them rest before the road is a long journey. Kate, turning to him, smiled enigmatically. Look what I found. She said and held out her hands to him, in which there was a huge seashell. Do you remember it? Of course, laughed Thomas. It's my first present to you. How glad I am that I asked you out then. You gave me a happy family and 2 wonderful children and 1 wonderful grandmother. 3, Kate whispered quietly. That didn't understand. Thomas looked at her. 3 and 7 months another will be born. He whirled her around the room, and the 2 were the happiest people on earth. Kate laughed and cried. She was sure now that he was only hers. The woman was no longer afraid to frighten away her long-awaited and so fragile happiness.